Alright, so this is the top of a frame, and the frames that I use are the foundation with wax, and typically I get them with the little hooks. So the hooks fit in under this top frame and then hang down, and we'll show you those other steps. So the frames come prefabbed where you break them apart like that, and then these have a little bit of a leftover from the trim, and so I always do this outside because it gets a little messy. But I just take my tool here and just work it off, make sure that's off. A lot of people will use a pocket knife. I found the pocket knife's kind of hard. I find this is much easier to use, and then I just kind of smooth off the rough edges. Sometimes this chisel will dig in a little bit, but that doesn't hurt anything. You can kind of see there's a stub there, but that's okay. And then when you are done trimming, you can put your piece of wood back here, and we'll show you that step later, but it staples right on with a nail gun, and you'll see kind of how it all fits together. But that's how I trim up my my frame stubs so that I can put the wax on. Alright, so we're assembling the frames. This part's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. If you have the parts, you could probably figure out how they go. When you're looking at it, what you're looking at against the table is the actual top of the frame. So we're building them upside down because in order to assemble them and put this and staple them all together, we start by stapling this top part first at this intersection with the staple gun, and then we flip them upside down and do the other side. So what we do is we get a whole bunch put together, and then we'll start stapling. Okay, we have all the frames first assembled, so now we're going to start stapling it. At first we're going to staple the bottoms in these two places on each end, and what I use is 5/8 inch by 1/4 inch narrow crown staples. So I am not a construction guy in any way, but I bought this nail gun at Harbor Freight, and I bought the air compressor. You'll hear in the background a little teeny one for, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks, and it's been well worth the money just instead of trying to hand nail these things. So you can also buy these frames assembled. So, I think most of the time when they give you assembled frames, it has the plastic foundation in them. I don't know if you can buy them assembled with the wax in them because of the damage in shipping. So anyway, we'll show you what we do on a couple of them. So, all right, we just get them generally close on the leveling. I know a lot of people get very scientific. These are bees, and if they can do it inside of an uneven tree, I'm not too concerned about their ability to do it in a not exactly level frame. Alright, what's going on here? Alright, so we just put in 3 or 4 staples. We put 4 in each, 2 on each end, kind of like that. And for those of you who are used to power tools, you have permission to make fun of me. I'm an accountant, so I don't know anything about power tools other than what I've learned. Alright, for this next step, what we do is we put staples through the top of the frame right here in between the sidebar, so right smack in between there, and what I use are 7/8 by 1 1/4 18 gauge crown staples, so right through here. just like that. So we'll go through all these and do that. Alright, so the last step, as you can kind of see on here, there where we broke off those tabs, and ultimately we're going to put the wax foundation in here. What we need to do is on this thick part right here, we're going to put a brad nail right through this thick part right through here. And so what I use for this step is I use 3/4 inch 18 gauge brad nails. So I'll show a couple of those real quick.
Okay, so the next step is to put the wax foundation in. So this is what the foundation looks like, and you can see they have hooks that are sticking straight out. Those you want to go against this board right here. So we found the easiest way is to have the slit where the wax goes in the bottom and tuck the edge of the wax in there, and the wax isn't perfectly straight, so have these little hooks that you kind of have to tuck in until you get it to drop all the way in that crack. And of course this one's a little stubborn, so once it drops all the way in the crack, and you want to line it up so you have equal space on this side and this side, because it won't go all the way to the edge. And then you gently flip it over, and now you can see these little hooks are resting against that board. And then this is the part that we showed earlier that you strip off. So this now goes back on over the top of the wax parts that stick out, and then that gets nailed with the nail gun.
Alright, for this step I use 5/8 inch 18 gauge brad nails, and I put 3 nails in the base of this. One in the middle and then 2 on the outside, and just real quick you put them right in. Oh shoot, I forgot to turn off the air compressor. This might be a little noisy. When it's done, one of the things to look is you have to be really careful so that you don't have a big gap right here, because the hive beetles love to get stuck in here. So sometimes I'll put even an extra nail in there, like this one. I think I will. Okay, so we have the wax foundation in, and as you can see on those vertical lines, those are metal supports that are built within the wax to just kind of help it give support. And hopefully it'll stay in focus, but what happens is the little edges tuck into this. There's a space in between here where the foundation tucks in between there. And one of the problems is when at first, when the wax is soft, if you take it out and inspect it, sometimes that wax will flop right out. Also on your supers, on your frames for your supers, they go into the harvester, the honey extractor, and as they spin, you better have support in them or all your wax is going to flop right out. So one of the things that I've found is I've tried it where you kind of do the X, the X through the frame. I've also done it 2 of them where it's just kind of 2 right through the middle. But one of the things I find in either of those scenarios, I find very often that bottom part just kind of pops out too often, and then it's just really hard to get it back in, and then the bees make wonky comb and everything else. So there's a lot of expensive ways to do this, and I see these wires and these crimpers and all that, and the only thing I've ever used is fishing wire. So here's the tools you need. I've just got some 15-pound test fishing wire. I bought 500 yards. I'm still on my first spool. You need a hammer, you need some wire clippers, and then the nails that I use, hopefully you can read that. It's not super critical that it's exactly this, but I've got 3/4 inch by 18, and you can kind of see them. You can kind of see one on that ruler. And they initially sent some with my framing kits, and then I just went to the hardware store and bought something that was really similar sized. So those are the tools you need. One thing I don't know if I've said throughout this frame building and wax foundation installation is you don't have to do all this. There are supply stores that'll do it all for you, so you can just pay a little bit of extra. I'm not a to-do it hands-on kind of guy. I've never owned a nail gun. I've never owned a compressor before this, and I just kind of always wanted to learn. So through this adventure, I've learned how, and it's kind of nice to have it around. And as this has gone on longer, that it's good to have those tools, because it's about half price to do it yourself, but it's still not very expensive by comparison for the frames. It's just nice to be able to build them when you need them. So I'll show you what I do. Now what I do is I take a pattern, and there's 4 holes, and I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and it really only takes, it doesn't really take any longer than doing an X or doing the middle, and the support you get, especially on the bottom, is outstanding. So I'll show you next what I do. Okay, when you look on the side of the frame, you can see there's 4 holes. And so what I do is I put a nail just below this hole and just above the bottom hole. So I'll kind of show you how I do that real quick. The biggest challenge is, my awkward fingers and my old eyes in this process. So just put in a couple of nails, and I offset them from the hole just a little bit. One time I used to put them really pretty much aligned to the hole, and one time I actually put the nail through the hole and severed the line, so it's just easier. I mean, even though it's probably a 1 in a million chance. So then you just take the fishing line, you feed it through, you run it down, you put it on the same hole across, and as I mentioned before, at times I've just done the 2 middle holes. I've also done the X pattern. But what I found is sometimes it's just not enough, and for the extra 2 feet of fishing line and a couple of seconds, I just think it's just more worthwhile to do both sides and do all 4 holes. So I just do that now. So once I get it through, I just kind of try to get it a little bit tight. It's kind of one way. You can't get it super tight. Wrap it around the nail. Make sure you get that flush, especially this top one, because the bees build the propolis, and it's just nice to not have a nail in the way. Pull this pretty tight, nice and firm. Wrap it around that. Again, make that flush, clip it off with the wire cutters, and then you do both sides, and kind of, I don't know if you can see the reflection in the light, but you got 4 strings of fishing wire, so that when you're inspecting, and this is heavy and new, it won't sink down through. So that's how you wire them up, and so that's the end of showing you how to build frames and install wax foundation.